Hello, good people. Welcome back to the Kuhb Games YouTube channel. A few weeks ago, I posted a short video announcing the characters for Charity Tournament, but wanted to make a longer one today to sort of go over all of the rules and everything that's going on with the tournament. So the characters for Charity Tournament is a tournament that Houdini and myself are hosting on the Temple of Ra Discord server. This will be a charity event. There will be no entry fee. However, any way that you wish to participate or donate or whatever, all proceeds will be going to Kuhb, a nonprofit that builds playgrounds. This tournament is going to be starting August 24th at noon Eastern Standard Time. However, you can sign up anytime in the Temple of Ra Discord. You can shoot me or Houdini a DM, or you can post in there. We'll get you signed up, no problem. In this tournament, you can use one of 10 pre-made decks, and they're going to be based on characters mostly from Duelist Kingdom. We're going to have Yugi, Kaiba, Joey, Mai, Taya, Mako, Rex, Weevil, Panic, and Pegasus. Each character's deck has been tested against each other. We put in quite a bit of time to make sure that all of the decks were sort of, balanced against each other and the gameplay felt good. And I got to tell you, there are a lot of moments in the testing that were just awesome. Really, really happy with how the gameplay has been between these different characters. We have several different archetypes represented here, and the gameplay has just been fantastic. So I hope you all, if you choose to participate, enjoy it as much as we did in our testing. For the rules of the tournament, everything is going to be based on GOAT format rules. So any GOAT format rulings on goatformat.com are going to apply. All card texts are going to be from GOAT format. However, each character is going to have one card that is not in GOAT format added into their deck. And we will be using the original text from that card, so it fits more closely to GOAT format. These aren't going to be like super broken cards or anything added into it, so it's not. They feel like they could have been a part of GOAT format, but Konami just hadn't given them to us at that time. The other notable rule in the tournament is going to be what we're calling the special spell clause. Each character has a special spell that is in their deck, and we have predetermined what that spell is. Most of them are field spells, but a couple of them are not. And we'll go over which character has each here in just a second. But the big rule that we added to it, and this has created actually a big dynamic that I'm a huge fan of, and some players may actually be choosing to go second because this is actually quite powerful. So the special spell clause reads, the player that is going second in a duel may search their deck for their character's special spell and activate it during the turn player's standby phase. This action will be taken before any other action during the first standby phase. We'll go over what the special spells are right now, and we can kind of see what that looks like. Yugi is going to have Yami. Kaiba has Fusion Gate. Joey has the A Forces. Taya has the Sanctuary in the Sky. Mako has a Legendary Ocean. Rex has Wasteland. Weevil has Forest. Mai has Harpy's Hunting Ground. Panic has Mystic Plasma Zone. And Pegasus has Senri Eye. Some of these are a little bit more important to each deck than the other. So say Mako, whose deck is pretty much built around a Legendary Ocean, you may actually choose to go second because you absolutely want this card on the field. And so this does give a whole lot more of a dynamic to actually going second, something that just does not happen in GOAT format, because since you can draw on the first turn, unlike more recent formats of Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's just zero downside to going first. In our testing, this is, once again, I've said the word dynamic a bunch of times, but in our testing, this has brought up an awesome dynamic and awesome gameplay. Really excited to see this in action. And the last of the rules, of course, all matches, since we are going to be having some OCG cards in here, we're not able to host up on Dueling Book in the GOAT format section, so all matches will need to be hosted in Unlimited. If you click on Classical Mode, it'll show up in Dueling Book like you're playing a GOAT format match, essentially, but it will not have the automatic draw for going first, so just make sure you manually draw that first card. Other than that, all the rules are just like GOAT format, no difference there. So yeah, let's get to all of the decks. All right, so we're just going to go through the decks in the order that I've got them on this Dueling Book account. It just makes it easier to make sure I go through all of these. But Joey is what we're going to be starting with. So of course we have the Red Eyes Black Dragon, Axe Raider, Masaki the Legendary Swordsman, Flame Manipulator, Baby Dragon, and M Warrior #1 to round out the normal monsters. We do have a small Gearfried package. We have Gearfried the Iron Knight, Swordmaster. Of course, we have Release Restraint and Blast with Chain to go with that. We have Time Wizard, Frontier Wiseman, Marauding Captain, Exiled Force, Little Wingguard, Tactical Espionage Expert. And then we do have a small fusion package here. We've got 2 King of the Swamp and 2 Polymerization. Joey is going to be able to use Thousand Dragon, Black Skull Dragon, Flame Swordsman, Dark Balter the Terrible, and Carbonala Warrior, all as fusions. So the fusion package was definitely, just a kind of an auto add. Joey did a lot of fusion summoning. I guess Thousand Dragon, he didn't really fusion summon, but, makes sense in the Joey deck, I think. Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity are going to be in every deck. However, there is not going to be any Delinquent Duo, so you don't have to worry about that card. We have Premature Burial, Inferno Fire Blast, 1 Rhoda, Heavy Storm, MST, Graceful Dice, Fusion Sword, Murasami Blade, and of course our special spell for Joey, we have the A Forces. For traps, we have 2 Kunai with Chain, which is going to be the OCG import for Joey, Call of the Haunted, Torrential Tribute, we already talked about the Blast with Chains, we have Skull Dice and Grave Robber to round that out. For the side, you're going to be able to use Swamp Battle Guard, Lava Battle Guard, Agetsu Fuma, Possessed Dark Soul, Command Knight, Time Wizard, Question, Shield and Sword, 2 Lightning Blades, Fairy Box, Needle Wall, and Dust Tornado. Honestly, this has been one of my favorite decks to use. I think it's a lot more powerful than it may seem, so if you choose to use Joey, I think that might be a solid choice. Alright, next up we've got Kaiba. You may notice that this deck has 41 cards in it. Yugi and Kaiba both have 41 cards in their deck because we decided to add one just cool bricky monster, sort of as a challenge that if you're able to get this out, good for you. You deserve to win in all of the good things. So that 41st card in Kaiba's deck is going to be Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. The OCG import for Kaiba is going to be Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. So in GOAT format, you're not able to actually summon Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. It's not possible because Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon isn't legal. It is here, so you can actually summon this thing. Is it good? Probably not. But when else are you going to get to summon Blue Eyes Shining Dragon if you're a GOAT player? So here it is. So Kaiba, of course, has 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons. Legion, we have Divine Dragon Ragnarok, 2 copies of Battle Ox, Mystic Horseman, Saggy the Dark Clown, of course that Blue Eye Shining Dragon we talked about, 1 Sword Stalker, 3 Thunder Dragons, Different Dimension Dragon, 2 Spear Dragons, Kaiser Seahorse, 2 Lord of D, and 1 Versago the Destroyer. For spells, we have Kaiba's special spell, the Fusion Gate. We have Wingbeat of Giant Dragon, Burst Stream of Destruction, Dragon's Gunfire, of course, Pot and Graceful. We have Stamping Destruction, Flute of Summoning Dragon, Wild Nature's Release, Rush Recklessly, Rare Gold Armor, Dust Tornado, Negate Attack, Burst Breath, couple copies of Interdimensional Matter Transporter, and a couple copies of Return from the Different Dimension. Kaiba, of course, also has access to fusions because, Fusion Gate, you better have access to fusions. So you have access to Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, Rabid Horseman, King Dragoon, and Dark Fire Dragon that this deck can't actually make. But that's okay. For the side, we have access to 3 Giant Orc, 2 Enraged Battle Ox, a Slate Warrior, a Blade Knight, another Stamping Destruction, Deck Devastation Virus, 3 copies of Final Attack Orders, D-Tribe, Threatening Roar, and Level Conversion Lab. So Kaiba, in testing, tends to do some of the most powerful things. Fusion Gate's a very powerful card. Return from the Different Dimensions, a very powerful card. Thunder Dragon with Fusion Gate, a lot of times you can just go turn 1 Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, which is going to be really good in this format if you look at all of the decks. However, where the deck is balanced it is quite inconsistent. So you're trading, that whole consistency for power thing. So if you're into playing super powerful decks, this might be the one for you. All right, next up we've got Mai, which has also been one of my favorite decks in testing alongside Joey. So we have our 3 Harpy Ladies that were allowed. We've chosen 1 Cyper Harpy Lady, 1 Harpy Lady 1, and 1 just regular Harpy Lady. We have 1 Harpy Girl, 1 Sky Scout, 1 Skull Red Bird, 1 Harpy Lady Sisters, 1 Harpy's Pet Dragon. We have 3 copies of Birdface, 3 copies of Flying Kamakiri number 1. We have 1 Lady Ninja, 1 Garuda, 1 Amazonas Chainmaster, Amazonas Swordswoman, and an Amazonas Paladin. My special card, Special spell, of course, is going to be Harpy's Hunting Ground. The OCG import is going to be Cyber Shield. We have 2 copies of Elegant Egotist, Pot Graceful, MST, Heavy Storm, Premature Burial, 1 copy of Rhoda, Ring of Destruction, Mirror Force, 2 copies of Mirror Wall, a Dramatic Rescue, Shadow of Eyes, Call of the Haunted, Dust Tornado, and Blast with Chain, which actually does pair very well with Harpy's Hunting Ground. That's one of the reasons that we decided to include it in here. This gives a little bit of extra utility with that card. For the side, we have Tornado Bird, Sonic Jammer, Amazoness Archer, 2 more copies of Lady Ninja to go along with the Ninjutsu Art of Transformation. We have a Sasuke Samurai number 2 and a Sasuke Samurai number 4. We have another Harpy Lady Sisters, a Triangle Ecstasy Spark, a 3rd Elegant Egotist. We have a Dragon Capture Jar, Amazoness Archers, and 2 copies of Non-Aggression Area. The fusion deck does not matter, so these are the fusions that you're going to get, but Mai is going to have no access to fusions at all, unfortunately, but we decided, not every one of these decks needs to be a polymerization deck, so here we are. That's Mai. Okay, so next up is Mako, and a lot of people have expressed that this is their favorite deck, and this is a really sweet one. There are a lot of really cool synergies in here. And I think this would be an excellent choice to play. I think it's very powerful, and it's fairly consistent, and I think it's cool that this is one of the decks that may want to go second a lot of the time. So we've got Jellyfish, Island Turtle, 7 Colored Fish, Giant Red Sea Snake. The OCG import is going to be Fortress Well, which of course we have Fortress Well's Oath and a couple copies of Manju to support. We of course have to have the Legendary Fisherman. We've got Deep Sea Warrior, 2 copies of Mama Bear, Starboy, 2 copies of Orca Mega Fortress of Darkness, 2 Cannonball Spear Shellfish, and 2 copies of Torpedo Fish. Rounding off the monsters, we've got 1 Abyss Soldier and 1 Sinister Serpent, and I think this Orca package is what makes the deck so sweet. So we've got 2 copies of Last Will and Salvage to help support that and make this package just actually powerful. Mako's special spell, of course, is going to be a Legendary Ocean. We have MST, Pot of Greed, Graceful, Premature Burial. We have Big Wave, Small Wave, and a Creature Swap to round out the spells. And then for traps, we've got 1 copy of Tornado Wall, Call of the Haunted, Dust Tornado, Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, and Ring of Destruction. The fusion deck doesn't matter for Mako. You're not going to have any access to that. However, the side deck, we do have this sort of burn slash aggro package. We've got 2 copies of Piranha Army, 2 Amphibious Bugroth MK3, 2 Amoebas, and of course all of those go along with Acts of Despair and Creature Swap. We also have Yomi Ship, Neo Aquamador, and Levia Dragon. And for the traps inside, we've got 2 copies of Sakuretsu Armor. So yeah, super synergistic deck, very powerful, pretty consistent. Been really excited about this one in testing. I think this has produced a lot of really cool game states and gameplay. Next up, we've got Panic, and this deck packs quite a punch. Panic's special spell is going to be Mystic Plasma Zone, and of course that's going to boost your monsters to some pretty good stats considering what's going on in the format, so excited to see this one in play. We've got 2 copies of King of Yamimikai. I have no clue if I'm pronouncing that right, probably butchered it completely, but I'm doing my best over here. We have 3 copies of the 13th Grave to go along with 2 copies of Emissary of the Afterlife to search it out. We've got Invitation to a Dark Sleep, Reaper of the Cards, and Visor Shock. We also have 3 copies of Mystic Tomato, Lord Poison, Big Eye, a couple copies of Wall of Illusion, Castle of Dark Illusions. The OCG import is going to be this Rigorous Reaver, and we have a copy of Sangand to round out the monsters. For spells, we've got Swords of Concealing Light, Premature Burial, of course Mystic Plasma Zone, Abyssal Designator, Dark Core, Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, a couple of Metamorphosis, so the extra deck is actually going to matter. We have Soul Exchange, MST, Call of the Haunted, Shadow Spell, Deck Devastation Virus, Dust Tornado, Ring of Destruction, and Torrential Tribute here. For the side, we have a whole suite of level 5s that you may want to bring in, depending on the matchup, because I guess some of these are level 6s as well, but, Panic's known for that a little bit. So we've got Fairy King Truesdell, Magical Marionette, Mephis the Infernal General, Ryukoki, Lesser Fiend, and then we have a Getsu Fuma, a Goblin King, another Dark Core, Brain Control, a couple copies of Nightmare Will, a couple copies of Bark of Dark Ruler, we have a Tower of Babel, and we have one Skull Layer. So, since the fusion deck is actually relevant here, because of the Metamorphosis, we have given you 2 copies of Flame Ghost, 3 Darkfire Dragon, 2 Dark Balter the Terrible, Fiend Skull Dragon, Reaper on the Nightmare, Ryu Senshi, Dark Blade the Dragon Knight, Last Warrior from Another Planet, and 3 copies of Thousand Eyes Restrict. Alright, we are here with Pegasus. I'm sure a lot of people expected Toon World to be the special spell for Pegasus, but we decided to just go in a different direction, and we used Sinri, which I think makes a lot of sense, lore-wise for Pegasus, just being able to see the top of the opponent's deck. And also Sinri is a card that we can build, a little bit like more of a competitive deck around than Toon World. If you get to put a Toon World out on your first turn, cool. You've got this random card that just doesn't do anything other than, make your tunes slightly better. But, toon monsters are already terrible. So Sinri just let us sort of go in a different direction with the deck a little bit. And I think it, just makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a lot cooler than just having Toon World as the default for Pegasus. So as far as monsters go, we've got Illusionist Faceless Mage, 1 copy of Relinquished, the Illusory Gentleman, Red Archery Girl, which I have been walled by multiple times in testing. So shout out to Red Archery Girl. We have a Manga Ryuran, Toon Goblin Attack Force, Toon Cannon Soldier, Toon Gemini Elf, and 2 copies of Toon Mermaid. And the last of the Toons, we've got a Toon Summon Skull. We do have 2 Manjus to go along with the Relinquished. We have Crass Clown, Dream Clown, Abyss Soldier, 1 Dark Eyes Illusionist, which is going to be the OCG import for Pegasus. We have Wall of Illusion, Sangan. Of course, we have the 3 copies of Sinri, the special spell. We do have a Toon World in here. We would not build a Pegasus deck without Toon World or the Toons, but even though something else is going to be the special spell. We have 2 copies of Toon Table of Contents. We have the Black Illusion Ritual to go along with the Relinquished. And to go with Sinri, we have 2 copies of DD Designator, and we have 2 copies of Mind Crush, also 2 copies of Ominous Fortune Telling, that all sort of just synergize with that card and make it work a little bit better. So we have Heavy Storm, Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, of course, MST, 1 Soul Exchange, 1 Brain Control, 1 Snatch Steal, and then the last card we've got in here is a Dust Tornado. In the side, we've got a couple of Parrot Dragons, a couple of Thousand Eyes Idol, 1 Don Zalug. We have 3 copies of Metamorphosis, so post board, the fusion deck is going to be online with this. We have a Vengeful Bog Spirit, 2 more copies of Soul Exchange, which synergize really well with the Metamorphosis, of course. We've got Mage Power, another Brain Control, another Ominous Fortune Telling, and a Dragon Capture Jar. So, since we do have this Metamorphosis package, post board, you've got 3 copies of Thousand Eyes Restrict, Dragonist the Wicked Knight, Fusionist, Darkfire Dragon, Fiend Skull Dragon, Dark Balter the Terrible, Kaminari Attack, Ryu Senshi, Dark Blade the Dragon Knight, Empress Judge, The Last Warrior from Another Planet, Bakuri Box, and Saint Joan. Next up is Rex, a deck that went through a lot of different iterations before we settled on this, and this is going to be another character who has their OCG import as a fusion card. Brachioradius is going to be that OCG import. The special spell, of course, is going to be Wasteland, but this is essentially a hyper-aggressive deck, really, with a little bit of a fusion element added in. So we've got 3 Two-Headed King Rex, Serpent Knight Dragon, and Crawling Dragon number 2, a couple copies of that to round out all of the normal monsters. And then we've got Blast Juggler, Cannon Soldier, Cyberjar, Dark Triceratops, Elementsaurus, a couple copies of Gigantes, 3 copies of Hyper Hammerhead, Iron Blacksmith Kotetsu, 2 copies of King of the Swamp, of course, to go with our polymerizations, and we have 1, the Earth Hex Sealed Fusion. As far as spells go, of course, we have our 3 Wastelands as the special spell. We have Brain Control, Defusion, a Giant Trunade, Graceful Charity, Heavy Storm, a couple copies of Last Will, Polymerization, Pot of Greed, Premature Burial, Smashing Ground, United We Stand, which of course is going to be a very powerful card in this format. 1 copy of Bottomless Shifting Sand, Ojama Trio, Ring of Destruction, and a Trap Hole. We do have access to the fusion deck, so you will have 3 copies of Brachioradius, 3 Cybersaurus, Labyrinth Tank, Metal Dragon, and then we just threw in Moki Moki King and Sandwich to just round it out. We wanted every deck to have 15 in the fusion deck, essentially, because, some decks don't have access to it, so we didn't want people to just show up with, no fusion deck and then people be able to, get the information of, oh, well, it can't be this deck, this deck, this deck, or this deck, or whatever. So, yeah, you definitely have all 15 slots here. As far as the sideboard, we do have A-Team Trap Disposal Unit, Ancient Gear Beast, Balloon Lizard, Blowback Dragon, Cypher Soldier, Cyber Raider, Dummy Golem, Golem Sentry, Battle Footballer, and then we have 2 copies of Limiter Removal to go with all of these machines that we have in the side, 2 Dust Tornadoes, a Bottomless Trap Hole, and a Trap Hole. All right, we're on to Taya, and fun fact, the first build that we had for Taya was way too powerful, destroying every other deck, pretty much. We knew that Taya had access to some powerful cards. We were like, maybe we need to give this a little bit of a buff here. We did not. We actually needed to tone down the deck a little bit, so this is what we landed on. We've got Shining Friendship, Petted Angel, Say Are You, Dunamis Dark Witch, which is the OCG import. It's literally Taya on the card, so there it is. Gemini Elf. We have 3 copies of Shining Angel, 3 copies of the Agent of Creation Venus to go along with 3 Mystical Shine Ball. We have the Forgiving Maiden, 2 copies of Magician of Faith, Hoshining Jin, I think is how that's pronounced, 1 Maha Vilo, and 1 the Agent of Judgment Saturn. So this deck is basically built around like Fairy Burn / Equip package, which I think is really cool, which is why the Maha Vilo is in here. The special card for Taya is going to be the Sanctuary in the Sky. Of course, we have Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, MST, Cestus of Dagla, 2 copies of Malevolent Nuzzler, 2 copies of Elf's Light, Premature Burial, and then we have Fairy's Hand Mirror, Ring of Destruction, and a couple copies of Solar Ray, Mirror Force, Beckoning Light, Dust Tornado, and Horn of Heaven in the main. The fusion deck does not matter for this character at all, but for the side, we have Ashura Priest, 2 copies of Soul of Purity and Light, 2 copies of the Unhappy Maiden, and a couple copies of Freed the Brave Wanderer. We have more equips. We have the Twin Swords of Flashing Light Trice, Wicked Breaking Flamberg Bow. That one's a lot to say. We have 2 copies of Dian Keto, the Cure Master, 2 Dimension Fusion, Malice Dispersion, and a Dust Tornado. Next up is my favorite deck. Can you guess why? It's the stall deck of the format, and we've got Pac-Man monsters. Weevil has an awesome deck. Very, very excited about how this one turned out. We have Insect Knight, Neobug, Giant Flea, Flying Kamakiri number 2, Hercules Beetle, 1 copy of Flying Kamakiri number 1, 3 copies of Howling Insect. We have, of course, the Insect Queen, Parasite Parasite, Swarm of Locusts, a couple Swarm of Scarabs, Prickle Fairy, 2 copies of Cocoon of Evolution, though we don't have any of the other evolutions in here. We have 4-starred Ladybug of Doom and Kisetai, I think is how that one's pronounced. I'm butchering a lot of these. That's totally fine. Whatever. We got Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, a couple copies of Insect Barrier. OCG import for Weevil is going to be Eradicating Aerosol. We have 3 copies of Forest, Insect Imitation, Premature Burial, Mystical Space Typhoon, Swords of Revealing Light, and of course 3 copies of DNA Surgery to go along with Insect Barrier and the Aerosol. We have 1 Gravity Bind, Ring of Destruction, Mirror Force, Dust Tornado, and a Widespread Ruin. Fusion deck doesn't matter at all here. However, for the side, we've got 2 copies of Maneater Bug. We have a Lured Poison, 2 Anti-Aircraft Flower, Skullmark Ladybug, a Lava Golem, 2 Multiplication of Ants, 2 Emergency Provisions, a Wave Motion Cannon, a copy of Toll, and then we have a Judgment of Anubis and a Dragon Capture Jar. If you are a fan of Pac-Man or just stall variations in general, this is probably the deck for you. It is really sweet and pretty good. And last, but certainly not least, we have the Yugi deck with this brick and a half that is Mirage Knight. But we gotta include it if we're gonna do some fusions with Yugi, because we have access to Dark Flare Knight. So Yugi is gonna have Dark Magician, Gaia the Fierce Knight, Summon Skull, Curse of Dragon, Gazelle the King of Mythical Beast, which apparently is a Phantom Beast card. Didn't know that. Feral Imp, Mystical Elf, Giant Soldier of Stone. To up the power of Yugi, we have a copy of Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. Of course, this is the only one in this format. However, we kind of made it go like you got to have the heart of the cards to get this thing out. We have 2 lights in the deck. We've got Mystical Elf and Magician of Faith, and that's it. So if you get this guy out, and we did test some games where we got this guy on the field. It doesn't just win the game automatically in a lot of situations. So it's not like you can just sack your way to winning with Yugi. So don't worry about that too much. But there is 1 copy of BLS in the deck, which I think is really cool. We've got 1 copy of Dark Magician of Chaos, 1 Dark Magician Girl, Skilled Dark Magician, Obnoxious Celtic Guard, Big Shield Gardna, Sangan, a couple of King of the Swamp to go with the polymerizations again, Magician of Faith, and we've got a couple of Karibos. For spells, Yugi special spells, of course, going to be Yami. We have Premature Burial, Brain Control, Card Destruction, Dark Magic Attack. The OCG import is Dark Magic Curtain, which is a pretty cool card. We have Graceful Charity and Pot of Greed, of course. Heavy Storm, of course, the polymerizations to go with the King of the Swamps again. Soul Exchange, Swords, MST, Spellbinding Circle, Light Force Sword, Magic Cylinder, and Mirror Force. Fusion deck relevant here. Of course, we do have polymerization. So we've got Black Skull Dragon, Gaia the Dragon Champion, Dark Flare Knight, Flower Wolf, and 3 Sandwich, because we can actually make Sandwich in this deck, which I think is pretty cool. In the side, we've got Dark Elf, Old Vindictive Magician, Catapult Turtle, Burning Land, Creature Swap, Exchange, Dispel, a couple copies of Gift of the Mystical Elf, Nutrient Z, Magical Hats, Chain Disappearance, 7 Tools of the Bandit, and Dust Tornado. So those are all the decks. Hope some of this may have inspired you to play in the tournament. If you're interested, jump on over to the Temple of Ra Discord. Link for the invite for that will be down in the description. We've got several players already signed up for this tournament, and we'd love to have everyone else there if you're wanting to play. And so hope to see you guys in the tournament this Saturday.